Okay, guys, happy holidays. Finishing the Christmas decorations. Happy Thanksgiving coming up. I'll still be doing videos next week, so stay tuned. But what I wanted to wrap up is not just Christmas decorations. I wanted to wrap up the video Zoom I did with Van. Hopefully, many of you enjoyed that. It's a little bit different type of content, but what I've got for you today is kind of the after hours stuff. Not only did we talk in part one about his purchase of the Poporis from Capital Audiofest, but in part two, I'm going to share some of the stuff we just talked about off the cuff. The camera kept rolling in terms of recording. And so I realized there's a lot of good stuff we talked about. Number one being the Bach. This was his first exposure to the Bach. We also talked about more of his background and also some of my background that I've never disclosed to you before. How I got my start on the internet even before YouTube, well before even when I did Tesla stuff, and why I want to go to North Carolina. You're going to find out why. Back in the 90s, when the internet was young, I had a little bit of a place on the internet, my first foray, and you're going to learn about that here. But also we talk about Maco and other things he saw that he liked at Capital Audiofest, and also even the McIntosh and Bose merger, which, by the way, this type of content I actually kind of like. Just two audiophiles, no agenda, no promotion. We're just talking the industry. I think a lot of you guys, not everybody, like it, but there's so much, same content of same gear getting reviewed online, promotional type videos, infomercial interviews, and that's all good for the hobby. But I like, the more I think about it, these kind of videos to me, if I'm on the other side of the fence, would interest me. Just two audiophiles talking. And on that vein, I think Sunday night, I'm going to have a Zoom with McIntosh users, some of my friends that are hardcore Macintosh, at least one for sure, and get their perspective on that Macintosh and Bose merger, because it's very important to get people's perspective that have been longtime customers of Macintosh, have owned everything, know everything about the company. So stay tuned for that next week. But again, if you don't check me out before then, happy Thanksgiving. I'll see you back here soon.
Is it Edgar? Is that the gentleman's name?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. Edgar's room. I stayed there a while, talked to him because Linda and I were the only ones in there at the time until somebody came in. But talked to him a little bit, but then it was even more fascinating in the Popori room. I mean, there were some cuts there that I just couldn't believe what it was doing. I mean, but I can also see, and this is what I mentioned to you on Friday. I can also see some music where maybe that doesn't work. I mean, I may be wrong, but I just feel like that it might be like overdone. And I like the fact that you can adjust the amount of crossover deletion or whatever you call it. I don't know.
The
You
crosstalk
mentioned that it was a
cancellation.
slider,
Yes.
and I think that's really going to be helpful. But yeah, some of the cuts that you guys played, and this is when you were there, I think there was a Madonna cut. I was blown away.
Vogue, yeah.
I mean, it was like, I mean,
She's almost whispering in your ear.
Were like, and then all of a sudden she was like right there. I mean,
Yes.
it was like freaky
yeah.
that, she was right there.
It's a good point that you bring up. And those aren't even the binaural tracks that Edgar has.
Yes, right.
Or spatial cue perfection, because he was there. He can tell you this trumpet player should be at 10 o'clock, and you will hear him at 10 o'clock. So yeah, sometimes even realism, because that's what it reveals, is the real true stereo. Those aren't fabricated cues. They mixed it that way. The Madonna one and then the Pink Floyd ones are cue sound. So they were intending that kind of effect.
Yes.
But like you said, some people may just be so conditioned to, they like it in front of them, it may be too much. So he's got a slider. You can bypass it totally if you want on a certain song, if you're used to it a certain way. But you also have that slider. And as I mentioned, because as soon as this becomes available in cars, you cannot have being
right. Exactly. Because it will startle people. It could startle people.
It literally did. The track where somebody is in the back of your ear.
Yes.
A gentleman came to audition. He literally jumped out of his chair.
Oh, I'm sure.
Because he thought it was an actual fly buzzing or bee. And
but the depth, Jason, the depth is that's something that I've always craved in my systems. Is if it's in the recording, I love the layering, the depth. And I know that's a lot room dependent. Obviously, it's a lot recording dependent. But if it's there, I want to hear it. And
Right.
this really brings that out. If it's in the recording,
It's going to be there.
it does that.
And I'll tell you this, 90% of all recordings don't have these exotic spatial cues. So we play some of those, even those are just streaming, and most people don't listen to binaurals.
Right.
But to your point, like if you listen to Omni mic classical music, then you're not going to get these weird things in your ear, but you will have that 30 feet back layering. You'll be able to pick out the sections, and that's what really, I think, and Edgar is a big classical music fan. He really enjoys those true spatial cues. And it
Yes.
doesn't get too much craziness, but it is fun when you can play a Madonna track and she's
I
whispering in your
agree. Yeah, I mean, it really was crazy. And I'd never heard the Bach. I mean, I've been following you talking about the Bach, for the last year or two, and I wanted to hear it.
Mhm.
Not really sure what it did, but I was really impressed. I mean, again, in Edgar's room, it was good, but even in the Popori room or the Potpourri room, I think it was better.
Yeah,
And there was
because it's a
obviously the speakers. There was a cost difference in the speakers and the height and everything
Mhm.
else, but you could certainly get a good sense of it in with the Jansen speakers that he had in his room.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And actually, technically, his measurements got higher crosstalk cancellation. So in certain binaurals, he might be able to even have proximity even better. But yeah, the potpourris give you that total line source and that open baffle nature that is just so addictive and just
Yes.
harmonious and coherent. And then on top of that, one thing that people don't realize is that ORC, the optimal room correction for frequency response, that is a big difference. Almost everybody that bought the Bach for just the spatial cues has now upgraded to the ORC for room treatment in terms of frequency response. And they can't believe how they were impressed with the spatial cues before. But really, when you fix what is at your listening position now, and you're getting what you paid for when you buy these speakers that are ruler flat in an
Right.
anechoic chamber, you never get that at your listening position.
That's
You
right.
never experience the true quality that you bought. And now they're hearing for the first time what it sounds like to have those good measurements at their listening position. And they are so amazed that I think if you made them take away one or the other, they'd almost give up the spatial cues for now the frequency response. So what'll be really cool is I'm going to use that tool to help set up the speakers in your room. If you have room treatments, where we might have to put them or where we
Right.
would place the speakers. And we'll also have before and after frequency response in your ear, tailored to your ear pinna. And so that'll be a fun part to walk people through from scratch. Bach, ORC, crosstalk cancellation, frequency response, and then the potpourris, and potentially integrate them with subs as an active crossover that comes with the Bach. You don't have to worry about that either. So it'll be a really fun install that we can record, and yeah, definitely looking forward to it. I have some members. In fact, I want to get you into my WhatsApp group. Do you have WhatsApp, or have you used WhatsApp?
I think my wife does, but I don't.
Okay. If you want to get WhatsApp, it's an app that's just like a text group. And I have all my members um, are in there. And it also includes people like Mike Sweck, Edgar, Steve McCormack, Rick Brown, all these guys you've seen on my channel, very
Yes.
knowledgeable audiophiles as well as dealers and as well as audiophiles with the Bach. And so we constantly share tips, tricks, recordings, and it's a fun group to be in. If you want to download that app, I'll give you access.
I would love to do that because
Yeah.
again, I respect Steve McCormack. I remember listening to an amp that he did. I mean, this was had to be back in the '90s, maybe the late '90s. I mean, and a dealer in this is when we were in Raleigh the first time back in late '90s, early 2000s, and there was a dealer that was just he loved McCormack stuff, Steve
Mhm.
stuff. And I heard the amp. He actually brought it over. I had Aerial 10 Ts at that time,
Yeah.
and he had that McCormack amp, and I've never forgotten that name. And then I thought it was interesting when I saw him pop up on your
Yeah.
channel.
Because
You know,
I bought that amp back in the 90s, and then I just
yes,
kept upgrading. I never had to pay dealer markup again. You just send
yeah,
it to
that's
him,
great. That's
and it was
great.
like, and yeah, if you had a McCormack and Aerial 10T back in the day, that was about the bee's knees.
That was the good stuff. It
Yeah,
was good
I mean,
stuff.
like they're really, ARC and Levinson were big back then, mega dollar price
Yeah.
tags. But when you were talking about reasonable budget, top of the line performance, Aerial 10Ts and McCormack stuff was, you
I
know,
sold 2 pairs of 10Ts because I had people come over and listen.
mhm,
One guy I worked with, and he bought that with ARC stuff, with
okay,
audio
yeah,
research.
audio research,
He
yeah,
had a phono preamp, he had a preamp. I don't remember what he had, but it was audio research stuff. But he bought the 10Ts because for the money, um, those are tough to beat. Now they didn't get down into 20s. I mean, they might be 35, 33, maybe, but they just had that. I don't know. Michael Kelly does a good job with speakers.
right,
And again, as I told you, these 20Ts that I have here, I've listened to a lot of speakers over the years, including Wilson and Magico and that kind of stuff. And there's some good stuff out there for sure. Um, but you'd have to spend considerably more to beat these from a direct radiating standpoint. Now, they got that ribbon tweeter, and
hmm,
they didn't have in the 10Ts. Yeah, I've still got those 10Ts. They're in boxes right now. They're in the
okay.
basement. But yeah, that was a
There's still a
McCormack.
market for them, I bet, because people
Yeah.
of my age would think, yeah, talking about better than spending, the same amount of money on today's material, you wouldn't get hardly
Yes,
anything for the money because they got to mark up stuff 10 times parts
that's right.
cost now. So the
That's right.
cabinet you're getting is going to be nowhere near as good. The parts you're getting are nowhere near as good. So yeah, that Ariel 10T would still be competitive in the same at the used price point, far more than that retail now.
Yeah.
So yeah.
And there was one thing that I was going to ask you about because you mentioned it. I want to say you mentioned it in one of your videos, but I had not heard this. I've got an AMG turntable,
Okay.
and micro Benz cartridge. But for the last couple of years, I've really been interested in the DS audio
Yeah.
stuff. And so at the show, the Capital Audio Fest, I mean, I tried to go in rooms that had the DS audio.
Hmm.
And there were a couple that would talk to me about it. I'm really interested in. I think it's the W3. I think seems to be kind of their sweet spot before you really kind of get up into their mega buck.
Master went, yeah, right.
Yeah, exactly. But anyway, I thought I heard you say, because I know that M Labs and there's actually a couple of other manufacturers
Phono
that have
stage. Yeah.
have been licensed to do the phono stage. But I could have swore I heard you say something about somebody doing a tube phono
Yes.
stage for DS audio.
Yeah, DS Audio created a tube one. Dr. Vinyl had it in his room with the Sound Labs.
Now, see, I didn't see. Okay, okay,
Yeah,
I didn't know
and
that.
it was mentioned in my wrap-up video with Carl. Carl works at a local dealer here, 3MA, and he's their
Yeah.
vinyl guy. And they also represent DS Audio. And
Okay,
so he was anxious but he got confused what room it was in.
I see.
Later, Dr. Vinyl sent me a text after seeing that. He said it was me that had it in the room. So I
But he's in
mentioned it.
Virginia, right?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So not too far. I do in my membership group, I have Rick Brown. He has both M Labs and DS Audio as two brands that he represents.
Okay,
So he would be the right one to talk to directly, give you the scoop. And then JR, who calibrates cartridges and knows a lot about DS audio and has worked with Rick, he's one to know which one is the sweet spot in their line. And
okay.
then Doug actually my friend Doug has the DS audio cartridge with his dome and turntable.
Ah, okay.
And he can give you firsthand impressions.
What phono stage does he use? DS
He
audio or one
uses
of
the
the
M
other
Labs. He
M
bought it
Labs?
from
Yeah,
Rick Brown, the M Labs.
yeah.
From what I've heard, the M Labs implementation was a little bit better to people's ears than the DS Audio. However, that was before this tube one. So who
Yeah,
knows if that changed the equation at all. But M Labs pedigree and um, Rick Brown sells both. So he can give you though much more than I can, and happy to put you in touch with him. But he'll be in the WhatsApp group. So that's another thing is that you'll now have the ability to talk in the group, but also DM these people
I see.
directly.
I see.
So Yeah, as soon as you load that app, let me know and I'll
Okay.
send you the invite. And then I'm sure we'll be coordinating and in touch soon to figure out when we come up there. And actually, some other members told me when I said I was going to come to rally, they're in that area. So they wanted me to film at their place. So I might stay more than one day in the whole
Cool.
area and maybe Charlotte even. So I'll make it a worthwhile trip, but definitely excited to see your place and get to see you firsthand. And I hear the
That'll be
food out there
fantastic.
is really good. So that's what I'm
Yeah,
told.
no, Raleigh's a nice area. As I say, we lived here back we moved here in 98 and we stayed till 2008. And then Linda and I moved out to Dallas and we were there for 14 years. Kids were grown by that time. They were in college and they finished and one of them came out with us for a while, but then we came back after I retired here a couple of years ago. Our oldest son and his family's here, 30
Okay.
minutes away. And so we knew we wanted to come back. I mean, the kids kind of feel like this is home anyway, because that's kind of, where they were raised. And then our youngest son is up in DC with his wife. And so, it's only about a 4 or 5 hour drive, depending on
Yeah, I got
traffic.
to ask you this question
Yeah,
because it'll reveal. I'm going to reveal some stuff I've never shared with anybody. I don't think
sure.
on the channel. Are you a Duke fan or a UNC fan?
Yeah, so it's probably more UNC,
Okay.
really. I mean, I grew up in Alabama. I went to Auburn, so I'm
Okay.
more of a Southeastern Conference guy.
Right.
You're probably an LSU person at heart, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah, I went to Tulane, their main
Okay,
rival,
okay,
and my friend Doug went to Bama, so I kind of quasi adopted Bama.
okay,
Now, if LSU's not playing Bama, I don't mind them winning,
right.
but and now my daughter goes to A&M, so now
Okay,
I gotta be an A&M fan.
yep,
But the reason I ask about, well, if you live in Carolina, you got to pick one or the other because that's one of the
yes,
biggest rivalries ever. And what I haven't told people, I don't think I've ever mentioned this on the channel, but my first foray into being a public figure on the internet started in the early 90s, basically when the internet was just getting started. I used to go to the NCAA, well, it was actually the AAU camps and
yeah,
scout
sure.
the high school kids that were getting like JJ Redick. I remember being in the stands when JJ Redick and Shavlik Randolph was actually a bigger recruit at the time than
Wow.
JJ Redick
Okay.
for Duke. And both Matt Doherty was the coach of North Carolina at the time, and they were all fighting over Shavlik Randolph, not knowing they had basically a Hall of Famer already. Duke did with,
Yes.
and then Carolina actually that same class. I think they had Rashad McCants, May, some guys that won them a national championship as well. But it was so much fun going in the stands at these AAU events and being amongst the coaches and scouting and then writing my reports. And I did
Cool.
it for North Carolina because I'm a big North Carolina fan, not so much Duke, but I did get to appreciate that rivalry back in the day. And that was, I used to write on back then, I think it was called InsideCarolina.com,
Okay.
but now it's called 247, whatever, the 24/7
Yes.
sports. It got bought out. But yeah, that brings me back. And I always wanted to attend a game in North Carolina for the Carolina Tar Heels. I saw them win the national championship and I saw them in the Final Four several times in New Orleans at the Superdome.
Yes.
Saw Michael Jordan and all that. And that's Dean Smith and Michael Jordan were kind of the ones that got me into
Yeah, I was a big Dean Smith fan, and both our oldest son and his wife graduated from UNC.
okay.
Yeah, so that's kind of the reason I kind of lean that way. But
Classiest guy, just wonderful
oh,
guy.
yeah, for
Yeah.
sure.
Like
But
him and
yeah,
John Wooden were just about the classiest. They give you lessons on life if you read their book and stuff that go far beyond just basketball.
I really got into John Wooden for that reason. To be
Hmm.
honest, I mean, I read stuff that he wrote, and I remember writing it down, like even when I was in high school, and it was like this is good stuff, you know. And you're right, Dean Smith was similar to that.
Yeah. And I remember
It,
when I first started with Arthur Anderson back in the day. Now Arthur Anderson's not around anymore, but at the time it was probably the single most successful private company in the world,
Absolutely.
and one of the best companies to work for. And when I first started, I went to Chicago where they had a whole campus where they train you. And they actually hired John Wooden to come speak to us as new hires.
Oh, I'm sure.
And
I can
still
see
to
that.
this day, I mean, that was in 91. You know,
Yes.
I'm dating myself, but I still remember that talk. He
I
was
bet.
so influential. He was
Yeah.
so impressive. And he's a basketball coach,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
yet he taught so many lessons that every word he said, you hung on his words,
That's right.
and it was so good. And same thing, Dean Smith had that same demeanor of respect, classiness, but able to command people, to
That's right.
lead them. And so that's something that very subtle, very few people have that combination of
Agreed.
traits. And that's what I kind of want to try to emulate myself. I can't never get to their level, but these are the kind of people you want to follow. And certainly Dean Smith was after John Wooden. I wasn't part of his time, but yeah, that's what got me into Carolina. So I can't
Yeah.
wait to come there. I'm gonna get some swag from North
Well,
Carolina.
again, they're literally right across the interstate from one another.
Yeah, I know that. And then
I
Wake
mean,
Forest too.
yeah, yeah.
Doug's
It's
daughter, my friend Doug, who you've seen on the channel, his daughter goes to Wake Forest, loves it
okay.
there. So yeah, so I can't wait to come to that area, see it, and meet you. And so
It'll be
yeah,
fun.
should
It'll
be
be
a lot
fun.
of
Like you
fun.
say, it's like this is what the hobby should be about, is having fun and not really being this kind of this stuck up and critical of everything and it's just enjoy it. And,
Yeah,
and
there's a
like you
lot of
say, it
toxic
helped.
people.
Yeah, well, there unfortunately there are a lot of those in a lot of different fields, but
Yep.
just to share something with other people that have similar interests and kind of similar outlooks and that kind of thing is fun. So I'm excited about it from that regard for sure.
Yeah, it's one of the biggest benefits I've had of the channel. A lot
I'm
of things
sure.
I do are just for no monetary benefit because YouTube doesn't pay anything, but I can't put a price tag on all the people I've met, all the fun times I've had. You just can't put a price tag on these experiences. And it
Right.
was so hard growing up in New Orleans, which was a small town, relatively speaking, to where I live now, finding even people that were, I had to recruit people. I recruited Doug into the hobby.
Yes.
He had no interest other than it after, and so, and then it's got a stereotypical vibe of who should be an audiophile, but I like to show that you could be a NASCAR fan, UNC basketball fan. You don't have to be in your basement neurotically listening to music alone all the time. It can be a
Yeah.
lot of fun. Aesthetics can play a role, just playing all different types of music, genres, not having to do just one type. So yeah, you're going to be fit in well in our group, and can't wait to come out there. Those WR1s, I'm definitely excited to see because eventually I'm going to get that sail shape. I think you saw,
I did. Yeah.
yeah, and that
Yeah. And they're
uh,
talking about maybe coming out with that by spring.
by the Tampa show.
Yeah.
That's the
Yeah.
goal. And performance wise, we're looking for the WR1 level of full range. So I'm very excited to see that.
Visually, visually, that speaker is stunning. I mean, or at least the pictures of it are now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The story behind it was that ironic story is I was in Munich and I was going to see the Metaxas booth.
Okay.
And Metaxas had that Prince, which was a very thin electrostatic, which
Yep.
if it provided the bass I needed, would have been perfect. It fits my room. It looked cool. I was predisposed to buying it almost without even trying it because it was so perfect
Right.
based on the specs. But when I went to listen to it, it could not do bass. You can't
Yeah.
get past physics past a certain point. But I was going to go see Costas Metaxas and talk to him, just say hi. But Popori was right across the booth, right across,
Okay.
and he was busy. And so they gave me a card that had that sail shaped on it. And
Yep.
I immediately was like, "Oh, this is
This is
badass.
cool.
This is
Yeah.
cool." They didn't have it. At the time, I thought he said they were building it, but evidently it was still a prototype. And then he brought me into his room right across the way. And I heard him now of that time in Munich for like the second time from Seattle, and I was super impressed. But at the time, I didn't even put two and two together that I had heard him before at Seattle. It resonated with me. And then when Mike Sweck started talking, and then he knew Gary Gill, who used it as his reference. It was just something that was super, like, I got to explore this more. Got on
Yep.
some Zooms with Mike Sweat, got really comfortable with the people behind it, then heard what you heard at Capital Audio Fest. And yeah, now it's pretty much a done deal. I'm going to be spending money myself.
Yeah. The people in Hungary, you mentioned it earlier, and it is important that you actually get a rapport with them, as to how they do business, how responsive are they,
Hmm.
and literally I wrote the email to them one afternoon, which would have been their nighttime. And I had a response first thing in the morning, and then we swapped a couple mails, and then Mike and I started doing more of the direct communication as it should be. But yeah, I mean, I know Mike's kind of been inundated with calls of interest and even a couple of purchases, and I'm happy for him. But it's like I want to see and hear it, touch it, feel it. You know what I'm saying? I mean, I'm just anxious, a little anxious, because I've never really bought a speaker this way. But there was enough behind it,
Hmm.
not a lot, but enough behind it, and including the sound that we heard, a couple of weeks ago. That I told Linda, it's like, I think I want to pull the trigger on this.
It should only be better. I mean, we had to live with one reflection there that
Yeah,
it was a very cramped room. Yeah, it should only be better in your room for sure. And certainly with me there to calibrate it. Yeah, I'm anticipating WR1's even better. Um, so yeah, I wouldn't worry, but it brings up a good point because today everybody's been talking about Bose buying
I
McIntosh
saw
and
that.
Sonos
I
Faber.
saw that.
And so it's a big topic everywhere. And like, let's say you're a Sonos Faber owner. I mean, what would it take for you to get a response from Sonos Faber, the
Right.
the actual people building the speaker, or who is even in charge now?
Yes.
That originally made, like, I don't even know. Like, this is to me, a really important part of the hobby is talking to the actual designers, the Steve
Agreed.
McCormicks and all this. And yeah, and then when you have a dealer behind it now, I'm very comfortable with Mike Sweck. So the
But I'm
distributor,
really impressed with what you've done with Mako. I know you've really helped them out a lot,
Mako,
and
yeah.
I got to spend some time with is it Armando? Is that his
Yes.
name?
Yeah.
I got to spend some time with him, not much, because he was in demand. He was in demand,
Yeah.
and I think a lot of that's up, because of you. But I do think they're onto something with that speaker. And if you're looking at a price point anywhere close to that, I would certainly encourage people to listen to it. I know that they had the quartz and they had the wood, two separate rooms, like right
Hmm.
next. And I told him, I said, I definitely like the room with the quartz speakers, but I'm not sure it's the quartz speakers that I'm liking, because the electronics were different, the front end was different. I mean, I think he had like a $50,000 or $60,000 lampizator
Yeah. On one
Poseidon
of
or
them.
something in one of
Right.
them, and I don't remember what the front end was on the
So
other
yeah,
one.
not realistic to what most people in that budget are going to
Agreed, at
do.
that price point are
Hmm.
going to have. But I told him, I said, you're onto something good here. And again, they seem to be doing a good job of trying to keep the price fairly low.
This is the
They
time to jump on that because they are
Yes,
priced far too low for what they're doing. I rarely see a speaker maker create that style of speaker, their first one out the gate. Usually it's a trial one. They're not going to that nth level of aesthetics, best parts, even the crossover box, the thickness of the chassis
the
alone.
the crossover box, I was really impressed with. He told me some of the parts that were in there, and what
Yeah.
they're doing there using via blue cable inside.
Connectors and
Um,
everything.
I was really impressed, and like for again, anywhere from what, 13 to 17,000, something like that. I don't
It's
know.
way underpriced for what other people are charging. And
Yeah,
that thickness of that open baffle is huge. I mean, that is
yeah,
rock solid and beautiful. The paint finishes
agreed.
that they do. So I don't know if you saw in my video, they're going to be sending me one to have down in my Houston Airbnb when that's finished.
That'll
and
be
they
cool.
asked me for a custom paint job.
Oh, you told me about that Friday.
Yeah, so
You did. You mentioned
yes,
that.
yes.
Yes.
So that's in the works, but it's just the fine touches that you rarely see from a speaker company
Agreed.
right out the gate.
And
And
that
he
red, the
dresses
red,
really good.
you know, the red one they had in
Yes,
the
yes,
lobby,
the Ferrari.
paint job on that was really, really good.
Yeah.
I
I
mean,
mean, this is
really
going to
good.
be in your home,
Yes.
so people are going to stare at it.
Right.
And in fact, probably people are staring at it as much as they're listening to it when you're not
Exactly.
playing music, or, maybe
Right.
you'll hook it up to your TV and use it a lot more. But that is something visually that's important. I just mentioned it in my recent video. If you don't like the looks of a speaker, you're not going to buy it. You
Yeah.
can't, I don't care how good those sound labs sound. If you can't fit 9 feet panels and it's going to be, you're going to get you a divorce, there's no reason to buy it,
Right.
so that's a big plus to Mako, and yeah, big props to them. And definitely right now is the time to buy them because they're underpriced for sure.
Yeah, and I think just because of demand, I think they'll end up going up in price,
Oh, for sure.
as they probably
They've already
should. But
done one price increase.
okay,
She told me they already did one.
because
Uh,
they had an unbelievable introductory deal,
yeah,
unbelievable.
crazy. No, it was basically at cost. I mean,
I almost bought a pair just
just
to
just
jump
because,
in on that.
just to look at them. Yeah, they're just
Yeah,
beautiful to look at.
yeah,
And they even drove across the border from Canada to deliver many of them, one to somebody in North Carolina.
okay,
So, yeah, the Wizard Cone, the Lee Song drivers are not for everybody. You know, you have to listen to them
yes,
and enjoy that. But when you compare them to the Caledons, much cheaper, the Caledons, but just nothing to look at
right.
comparative.
I
I mean,
agree.
it's just a night and day difference.
I
And the
agree.
spatials as well. Now sound quality wise, obviously, but you can't get better parts in that crossover,
Yeah,
external crossover off the chassis. The quality is just there for if you want to have pride of ownership of that
I
ilk of
agree.
open baffle. I can't believe a new company has surpassed these other ones,
Right. I
so
agree.
so
But
quickly.
he's
So
very diligent. You can tell he's very conscientious about his work.
yes.
You know, he's very, very conscientious about his work. And I just think hopefully they've made a big enough splash where they can kind of get their price indicative of kind of their performance and competitors and that kind of thing, because I know they busted their asses to get where they are. And I know they had some initial shipping issues and but it sounds like they've got that worked out. So, you know, hopefully they're kind of on an upward trajectory, you know.
Yeah, you couldn't ask for better people, and they have a very synergistic match of traits.
Yes,
What Armando's good at and what Deborah's good at.
right.
They are able to split the load and do cover everything. And so you want to see young people succeed in that kind of business. And I think that they're doing everything right. So hopefully they will succeed. It's just a tough
Agreed.
business.
It is. It is.
Another speaker brand they're a
Yeah.
dime a dozen. But look at how much attention they've gathered. They caught my attention last year from the second floor of the hotel.
Yeah.
They were down static display. That's how attractive it was from a distance.
Right.
And when you
Right.
get up close, it's just another level.
But I
So,
think it does show though how this industry is. And I was with a guy out in Dallas. He was closer to you than to Dallas, but um, it was Dave Thompson of Raven Audio.
okay,
I don't know
yeah,
if you're familiar with them,
yeah.
but I got to know Dave pretty good. You know, he was obviously trying to break into the industry, you know,
Hmm.
with tube amplification, two preamps, etc. And it's tough. I know he's attended several shows, and I don't know how he is now, but I bought some stuff from him, and I still have it actually early on to kind of help him out. But it's tough to break in unless you've got somebody who can. You know, you've done a great job with Mako for sure, and they deserve it. But it is those small people that are just so they're so motivated and they're so passionate about it. You know, you want to see them succeed, but you think that they're up against a lot of Goliaths, it's just really who gets bought by Bose. You know, I mean, I think in McIntosh getting bought by Bose. I mean, mean, if I'm a McIntosh person, I'm rolling over. It's like, are you kidding me? Because
Right.
that really surprised me because I never had an idea that that was even in the works.
Right.
You know?
I mean, immediately I've seen on the forums there are groups, the Macintosh groups.
Yep.
Many of them are not happy.
I'm
Same
sure.
thing with Sonos Faber. I mean, immediately all these years they've been making fun of Bose. Now
They're part of Bose,
they're
right?
part of Bose. So, you know, the perception. I think I made this comment in my YouTube short, is that some have been able to do that. Rainforest Cafe is one of the worst restaurants in the world. Just the nastiest food ever. Got the, you know, for the kids, they'll fine. But they're also owned by the same guy, Tillman Fertitta. He's here in Houston. I see him out every once in a while. He owns Mastro's Steakhouse, which is one of the better ones. So he owns both. And one doesn't seem to affect the other. So maybe if Bose has a way of doing it, I just don't know how that's going to be possible, because the perception, the negative perception of Bose among McIntosh, Sonos Faber, and other people is so great that I just don't know. They may be sabotaging both brands, you know?
Yeah. Now, Bose is German. Is that right? Are they German?
I don't know if they're German. That's a good question.
I thought for some reason I thought they were German. They may not be, Jason. I don't know. But yeah, I was very surprised to hear that. And actually, my wife, you know, she started watching you long before. I mean, like, it's really funny that she really likes your videos.
Oh,
No, she really does. And so when she got to meet you in Washington a couple of weeks ago, that was a treat. But she's the one. I was up here, she was downstairs, and I get this FaceTime on my phone, and I look at it, it was like Linda downstairs, and she said, "You're not going to believe this. Bose just bought McIntosh."
oh, she knew before you. Okay.
No, she knew before I did.
Wow, she's on top of things. Okay.
Yeah, and I'm thinking,
I should be interviewing her.
Exactly.
Why am I interviewing you, man?
You wasted your time with me, man. But no, it is hard to believe that happened. I'm sure there's a lot behind it, and I'm sure McIntosh will say it gives us more capital, more resources, whatever. But yeah, that'll be a tough one for some people to swallow.
Yeah, it's not surprising based on some inside information I heard that they sold. It was surprising that Bose was the one, but yeah, we'll see how it plays out. It's definitely creating quite a buzz,
I'm sure.
and you know, over time it may just die out. It may not be a big deal, but the churning of these brands and the conglomerates and the access to there's nothing that resembles Macintosh now, relatively speaking, to what created the name Macintosh. And some of my friends that are the most adamant fanboys of Macintosh have even pivoted over the years because things do change. And that's what I'm looking for now. I'm looking for people like Maco, the passion, the people that originally created Macintosh, wanted to step out of the box. Mark Levinson, he was doing stuff, you know, these guys, now that Mark Levinson doesn't even have his name anymore, he can't even use his name on stuff. And Krell, same thing, you know. So it does matter who owns the brand. You know, the brand does not stay the same regardless of who owns it. You know, it's sheer folly to think that it stays the same. It doesn't mean it gets bad. It doesn't mean it's not making good products, but to just think that the ownership does not matter is sheer folly. So we'll see if Bose can do something maybe to stem the tide, because I think overall the perception of Macintosh has been going down, not up since its heyday. So maybe they can turn that course, but we'll see. It's a head scratcher for sure.
Yeah, I've always wanted to like Macintosh because I love the way they look. I do like the blue meters, but when I was out in Dallas, I actually had a mod right amplifier.
Oh yeah.
It was the top of I still have it. In fact, it's still in here, but it was that KWA 150 SE. It was their top, top of the line. And I got to know Dan a little bit, and great guy. Talking about passionate and small, and he's kind of grown it, but great guy. And so I had that, and then out in Dallas, as you know, there's a lot of dealers out there. Hi-Fi is a big thing, and so I got to know a guy at the dealership, had Macintosh, and he let me borrow a pair of I guess it was 601s, the predecessor to the 611. You know, the monoblocks.
Hmm.
and compared the 601s to the mod right, and there was no comparison. I even
Yeah.
told Dan Wright, I said, Dan, I said, I don't know how you do it, but like, because at that time his amplifier was probably selling for $8,000 or something.
Hmm.
These mono blocks were 11 or 12, I don't remember. But they just didn't sound good compared to the
Right.
mod right. I'm sure they've done some things, because that was, again, an iteration or two ago. But I've always wanted to like them, but that was not a good experience for me. So I've never really, gone
Yeah,
after it.
arguably you heard them at the better time to hear
You
them,
would think,
but
yeah,
yeah, I mean, the autoformer nature of their solid state designs have pluses and minuses that, with
yeah,
certain speakers, they may actually drive certain speakers better because they multiply the impedance and make some tough to
right,
drive speakers a little bit easier. But the unconventional type of design um, and those transformers in the signal path could also be a negative too.
yeah,
And so, yeah, it's one of those. I know that they're built like a tank. They don't short, and I
right,
even have a legacy um, stereo McIntosh in my main family room because I have kids constantly, and
yes,
if something gets shorted, it's been a workhorse.
right.
But it dates back well over 20 years now. I don't know if I'd ever buy a Macintosh piece
I had
today.
a preamp. I did own a preamp of theirs.
Okay,
It was a 2 preamp. Had it probably for about a year, and then sold it to a guy in Houston when I was
really?
out in
Okay,
Dallas. Yeah, yeah. He drove
yeah.
up from Houston and bought it. And I mean, it was okay, but again, it wasn't as good as Dan Wright's Mod Right top of the line preamplifier back then. This was probably 10 or 12 years.
Yeah, and really they struggled always with digital. Their digital products have always been a struggle.
Yeah.
That's why they actually acquired Wadia back in the day,
I
because
don't
they,
guess I knew that. I don't
yeah,
guess I knew that, because I actually had a Wadia that I had it on loan from a guy that I was good friends with, and I probably had it for 6 months, and I really liked it. This was
hmm
before this was when they were standalone. I didn't know that Macintosh bought Wadia.
yeah, they didn't do anything with it. Maybe
Hmm.
they just wanted to acquire some of the digital expertise,
Knowledge, expertise, yeah,
but most of those people had already left as well from Wadia. So from their heyday. So,
yeah.
when you start hearing behind the scenes, yeah, the brands stay the same, but the people behind the brands are not the same.
That's
And the
right.
quality of
Yeah,
products do not stay forever.
right,
Um,
right.
so that's why understanding who owns the brand, the pedigree, the quality of people, all those things matter. And like that's why I had to do some serious vetting of the Popori.
Yeah.
Maco, I've gotten to know well. The brands that I represent, knowing Edgar, you can't get better than him on a
Yes.
quality of human basis, but he's one of the smartest people on the entire planet.
Oh,
I mean,
absolutely.
a rocket scientist on top of this amazing acoustician and engineer.
Yes.
It's just I'm very privileged to say I know him and talk to him, if not daily,
Is it
weekly.
Harvard that he's affiliated with?
Princeton.
Princeton. Okay.
In fact, I have a video. You may want to watch it, a tour of his Princeton facility.
I
It's
see.
in a playlist. You may enjoy that
Okay.
because he shows all the things that he's working on, stuff that's still down the road coming. So stay tuned
But
on
it's
that.
but it's on your channel.
It's on my channel.
Okay. Okay.
So I have so many Bach videos. I have a playlist, but there's
Yeah.
one that where I tour Princeton.
Okay. The Princeton.
And,
Okay.
and that's
Cool.
going to be very interesting because you'll see all the things he's working on.
Yeah.
And he basically invented what you see and hear at the Sphere, even. Um, those array speakers are basically a design that he created.
I did
Um,
not realize that. I mean,
yeah.
both of my kids who aren't kids anymore, they went to that U2 show out there
Oh,
last
yeah.
year, and I know you went. But I was really curious about the sound, because they talk about
Unbelievable.
technology behind that, and yeah, they both were pretty impressed with the way that sounded. So
Well, if you
it's,
watch my
it's
video, it was
I did.
I was on the second row. Any
Yeah.
other concert would have been impossible to film because you're right there where the speakers are. It
Right.
would just be bass heavy.
Overwhelming.
It
Yeah.
would distort. But yeah, the speakers were hundreds of feet away up in up
Yes.
behind the band even, and they
Yeah.
are just arrays that are beamed to different sections.
Yes.
You
It's
could
crazy.
even play the concert in different languages if you want. So
Yeah.
it's that powerful how they can beam the sound, and it was so perfect no matter where you were. So yeah,
Right.
if you can ever get to a concert there, highly recommend it. Highly
Yeah.
recommend
Yeah,
it.
no, your video was very, very good. Or I think you had more than one video,
Yeah,
obviously.
definitely.
But yeah, they brought back just some stories, and they were very impressed, you know, with the sound,
Yeah.
and obviously the
Visual.
visuals too. You know,
It just
crazy.
ruins it for any other. I mean, I really haven't gone to concerts other than local clubs.
Right.
A stadium concert to me with those big PA speakers they're just echoey, and it just,
Yeah.
I'd rather listen to it my system, you know?
Right.
Uh,
Absolutely. Yeah.
so yeah, it ruins the experience, but I think that this, if it proves financially viable, then I can see this coming to more cities and
Yeah.
cities wanting to invest in a sphere. I think Dubai is going to get one next. So yeah, it's a special way to enjoy a concert, you know.
Yeah. No doubt. No doubt.
But I think your
Well,
room is going to be second best pretty soon. So
well, I'm excited about it, and again, look forward to you and Mike coming up. And again, just remember that again, there's plenty of room in this house, so don't
definitely
feel like you got to get a
appreciate that.
hotel or something like that. Even if you're
Yeah.
here 2 or 3 nights, you know, it's fine.
Great. Well, I know we're coming up to Christmas as well, so we don't want to impact that, but definitely want to get those speakers to you as soon as possible. So Mike's on a cruise this week, but I know we're going to be talking to Popori because I got to talk to him about my pair.
Yeah.
And then Mike is sending me that demo pair. So we'll keep you posted. I'm sure Mike will keep you in touch, and then we'll
Cool.
coordinate everything real soon.
All right, man. Again, pleasure talking to you, and hopefully you got what you needed from me on the video. I know I
Yeah,
kind of
I'll make
rambled
this
some,
work.
but
Maybe we have so much good conversation here. I'll figure out a way to make it work. So.
all right, man. Take care.
All
Have a
right.
good
Thanks
night.
again. You too.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.
Bye.